Welcome to the Queens of Moxie. I'm Mary Kay Campbell, the host of this program, and I'm so excited that you've decided to join us today. Every week, we bring amazing women to our podcast to talk about how they have stepped into joy and reclaimed their moxie and are living their authentic life. I want to get started, but before we do, I want to remind you to subscribe to the weekly email. Simply go to queensofmoxie.com and click on Weekly Inspiration. That way, every Monday morning, you'll get a link to the latest podcast, a beautiful image, and a fabulous quote. It's a great way to start out your week. So let's get started with today's podcast. Welcome to the Queens of Moxie. I am so excited to be here today with my good friend, Samantha Barber. I met her at a women's retreat not too long ago, actually, and her story is so inspirational and something that I personally can relate to. And so I've asked her to be on the podcast today, and I can't wait for you guys to hear her inspirational story. Just to give you a little bit of background about her, she got her general studies degree from Antigua State College, and also went to the College of Southern Maryland, and she's gotten several leadership certifications. She has two kids, a daughter who's 23 and a son who's 17, and she lives in the Shenandoah Valley. So we're going to jump right into it. Sam, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, I'm so excited. You just bring so much energy. I can't wait to dive into this conversation today.
I know it's going to be fabulous. And y'all, when I met Sam, it was funny. We were standing in line waiting for them to bring the coffee out. It's like early in the morning, waiting for this conference to begin. And we're all like kind of just standing there waiting. And I just started talking to her, and immediately I knew. I was like, oh, she's my soul sister. I just knew.
We are for sure. You guys are making fun of me in my suit and my Uggs.
No, I did not make fun of you. What did I say?
You say you're rocking those Uggs.
I did. I said you're rocking those Uggs. I loved it. It was so cold that morning, and you looked so awesome, and you had these awesome Uggs on, and I was like, that's the way to go. That is the way to go. And then I saw you in the bathroom later, and you had your heels on. I was like, oh, you changed out of your Uggs. And then you put it back on.
I put them back on.
Which I thought was fabulous. I was like, I'm all about comfort. Absolutely.
I know, that was so good.
I know. I mean, I immediately knew. I was like, I love this woman. So, Sam, I want you to give us a very brief, like, synopsis of, what a little bit of the story that you shared. Not a lot, because we're really going to talk more today about where you are now and what you've, what you've done since then. But you've had some very difficult things in your past that you have overcome. You went to college early because you were uber smart, and what were you, 17? No, I think I got that.
I graduated from college when I was 17. Yeah, so I went into college shy of my 16th birthday and graduated, because I have a late birthday. Mm-hmm. So, started college right before my 16th birthday. I'm a Veterans Day baby. I'm so proud of that. And my kids have to love country. Freedom isn't free.
Yeah.
So I graduated 17, 18, from college. It was intense.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I have two kids who are, one's about to be 18 and one is 20, will be 21 in June. And I can't imagine them graduating from college that young. Like, your frontal lobe isn't developed, you just don't have the critical thinking skills that come with age. And it's just honestly part of the maturation process is your brain continues to develop, and your brain isn't fully formed until you're like mid-20s, for boys, maybe 26. So true. They're about 3 years behind the girls. So knowing that you were on this super accelerated track, you're very smart. you graduated so young, and like most people, that first love is powerful,
Very.
intoxicating,
Mhm.
and you were young and made some very adult decisions.
Very adult decisions.
Yeah, so tell us a
Adult
little bit
decisions.
about that.
So started in my relationship with my first husband when I was 16, my first year of college. And he was older than I am. Had already graduated from college, working. And so again, as you said, I mean, college, everybody's dating older people, and family was not for it. Bless my grandmother's heart that she's a praying woman, because I probably wouldn't be sitting here today. But very early on, he took control of me seeing my friends, control of where I go, control of what I did. And again, that matriculation, I'm like, oh my gosh, he loves me. He wants me all for himself, and then as I got older, and I begin to like, I'm going out with my friends. And he's like, no, you're not. I'm like, bro, please. And then there's where the backhand came in. There's where locking me in a room in his house came in. Um, so it was I developed two lives. I grew up in a very Christian, amazing love and support. And looking back now, my family wanted the best for me, but I didn't see that. And so it was a great divide where I lived two very different lives. My best friend knew, which I lost in the process of all this, because she didn't understand why I would put up with something like this. But as you said, first love is powerful, and I didn't know my dad on the onset. I had actually just met my dad shy of 16, and so had great uncles. My uncle who took care of me, but that example of what love looked like, because he showered me with everything. I just needed to say, okay, honey. And as long as I said, okay, honey, I didn't even do my own laundry.
Mm.
Okay, I did nothing for myself. He took care of my laundry, took me to work when, I graduated, came and picked me up from college. So it was a world wrapped up in him. And when you're young, that seems amazing. And in my mind, that was love, because he showed me love. And a lot of people say, girl, you're crazy. But no, abuse is a drug. Why do we drink? Why do we smoke? It was an emotional high
Mm.
of an entangled, um, controlled, um, that was toxic, but I was too young to understand that. Even when we broke up, I felt like I was gonna die, um, because I didn't understand anything else, because I was so young, and I thought that's what love looked like,
Right,
So
right.
yeah.
Well, and when you're dealing with narcissism and you're dealing with abuse, there's something called a wheel. It's not called the wheel of abuse, but there's some wheel that has all these different quadrants. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but if someone does one of the things in there, it's considered abuse. And the flip side of it is a healthy relationship.
Right.
And what my listeners may or may not know is that my ex-husband is verbally and emotionally abusive and a narcissist. And so I can relate to what you're saying. He never physically hurt me, but he raised his fist to me. He kicked holes in walls and doors and a solid oak kitchen cabinet. And one time he was holding my 2-year-old and it was, I'm going to hit you kind of thing. And so there was always that threat.
Right.
And what you find is that you can feel the tension building, and it's coming,
Yeah.
and there's absolutely nothing you can do to prevent it. But
Mhm.
then once the explosion happens, you're in a great place. It's wonderful, everything's great. And there's this gaslighting of, well, you know if you were just a little bit more patient, if you hadn't said XYZ, oh, you're just overreacting. There's this whole idea of what counselors call crazy making.
Yeah.
And that's what abusive people do, is they make you think that that what is reality is not reality, that this alternative thing that they envision is the reality of the world. And when I went to counseling, someone showed me that circle,
Yeah.
and my ex-husband had every single one of them. Things like controlling who you see and what you do and how you do it, and controlling the money. And there are, I would encourage people to look it up, and I'll put it in the web notes, the show notes. But um, it was an eye opener for me, because
Mhm.
one of those things is considered abusive, and I had all of them.
Yeah. And you hit the nail on the head, is that you cannot get out of this crazy pattern without seeking counsel.
Yeah,
Because as you know, I didn't seek counsel after the first one, and went, I thought I knew what I was supposed to be looking for. And someone mature, someone this, someone that, and same wolf, different, same wolf, just different color coat.
yeah,
And the second one was exactly like your first husband. I remember my first husband, he had just beaten me so badly, just simply to going to spend the afternoon with family, and he didn't know where I was. And that night, he lifted me up because I was in so much pain, gave me a bath, and just like, I love you. Why don't you listen to me? So then that emotional roller coaster ride, it's, oh my gosh, all I could have done was just tell him where I was. So forgetting everything he just did to me,
right.
and inflicted back on, if I would have just listened, you know?
Yeah,
And but my second husband was a totally different roller coaster ride. He, unlike my first, he literally drove me to attempt suicide. Because the emotional abuse that came of, you're no good, you're not a good mother, you're evil,
yeah,
you and your family are going to hell, all those different things. You've slept with every, because I worked in Capitol Hill, you slept with every senator. That's why you're so successful. Um, so you live with this person, you're married to this person, you have children with this person, and they're telling you that you're literally nothing. So you don't look in the mirror because you don't want to see yourself, because you're believing what they did. And after I had my daughter, 6 weeks old, I looked at her and said, you deserve a better mother than me. You deserve a better life. And um, I know suicide is such a crazy thing and a painful thing that our country is going through. So I'm such an advocate for that there's life after, because I'm living proof, you
right.
know. And I remember laying on that hospital bed, my stomach being pumped, and like, wow, I can't even kill myself. As I said, I can't even kill myself. I'm just so worthless. And to rise up from that, for a phoenix to rise up from that and be
Right.
golden,
Right.
is very much possible.
Yeah.
So if anyone's listening and they're in a really dark place, please seek help, because there's life after pain. There really is. I'm living proof. There's life after pain.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about that. You know, I think it's important for people to understand what you've been through, and for people to hear that you can go through some really bad things and still come out triumphant and powerful and amazing. And you can find the strength and the courage. And as dark and desperate as you might feel, there is hope. There is
There,
another tomorrow. And
there,
and there's so much to look forward to. Um, and you got to get past it. And it's hard to walk through that valley. But tell us then, you had 2 children with him, and for those listening, they don't know that you were ready to leave him and found out you were pregnant. And so you stayed with him and ended
Yeah.
up having 2 children with him, and lived through a suicide attempt. Um, and was that your wake up call, or what was it that changed everything for you, that allowed you to see hope again?
Oh, I remember my best friend. She, amazing woman, lives in Maryland, owns a Lefty's Barbecue, a beautiful restaurant in Southern Maryland, her family. And I remember talking to her one day, and she said to me, if this was Kendalley, which is my daughter, if this was your daughter, um, would you allow this to happen to her? And it's like, of course not. And she's like, why are you allowing it to happen to you? Because it's actually happening to her. And I was like, whoa. Um, and I was a stay-at-home mom, and I want men, women to hear this. I was a stay-at-home mom. I had given up my job at the on in DC to stay with our kids, be at home with our kids after our son was born. His nanny retired, so, and he didn't want his children to go to daycare, so I was the nanny. I was the mommy, so gave up my job. Coming full circle, I remember Samuel was our son was 3 years old, and I looked at him, and he was like, "Mom, boys don't fold clothes." It's like,
Oh,
okay, okay. And his dad was home the next day, and I had a girlfriend who came over because I had started a nonprofit. And he went off and said, this is my house. You don't bring anybody into my house when I'm on a day off. And I was like, that's it. I said, I'm not, I have nothing, but because you think I'm dependent upon you, I'm going to stay in this. And he didn't believe me. I was like, that's it. So again, it's a process.
mm-hmm.
In case a process. I had to go to Center for Abuse Persons, CAP. I had to make those steps, hard steps. He took my name off of our, he took all the money out of our accounts. He took my name off of the car insurance. He took my name off of a medical insurance. And I was good friends with my girlfriend, who was the director for the Department of Social Services in Southern Maryland. And I'm like, I have no money. I have nothing. That circle, financial, he tried every control. And he said, if you come back to me, we lived in a beautiful 400 square feet home, 3 cars in the garage, the outer prettiness of life. And he said, if you want it back, it's easy. Just come back to me. And I went Caribbean. I remember my grandmother. I said, I would walk barefoot before I come back to you.
Good for you.
So I was like, oh, no. And so I filed protective order, which drove him crazy because he had to move out of his pretty house. And he relentlessly went after me. He turned church members against me. He turned some of my friends against me. Because again, I was that Christian wife who said nothing. So he had ammunition to let people feel like he was a victim, and I was destroying our family.
Yeah.
It was hard. It's hard. It was hard.
It is. And I think that the biggest challenge, one of the biggest challenges with verbal and emotional abuse, is that people can't see it, and as demented and crazy as this sounds, I can remember almost wishing my ex-husband
physically harm me. So I had physical evidence of what he was doing, because
Exactly.
it was so hard to explain, and at that time, people weren't talking about
Mm-mm.
emotional and mental abuse. Like,
We don't talk about those
nobody
things.
knew about it, and
Mm-mm.
it's interesting when you talk about like not having, being so dependent on someone. My ex-husband used to say to me all the time, you can never live on your own. You could never make it on your own. And he said that because we started dating in college, and I went right from the sorority house to an apartment with him and started my life with him. And I'd never lived alone. And I
Right.
didn't know, and when I called my parents to tell them that I was getting divorced, unfortunately, my mom was really trying to be realistic, but she called me back after I told her what was going on and why I was getting divorced a couple days later and said, "We can't help you. You're going to be just above the poverty line. Are you sure you should do this?"
Yeah.
And you have all these forces telling you that you can't do this, that you're not going to make it, that you don't know what you're doing, that it's not that bad. And all my life, my mom said, marriage is hard. You have to really work for it. So I
Mm-hmm.
thought that this was just the way marriage is.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until we moved to Virginia and I insisted we go see a counselor, and we went through the employee assistance program. And the
Yeah.
counselor that we saw us for, one session, recommended that we needed long-term counseling, send us somewhere else. But she spent 45 minutes with my ex-husband, and 2 weeks later called me and said, "I'm worried about you and your children and your safety. Do you have extra keys? Do you have a credit card in just your name? Do you have a plan for where you'll go if you get in a fight? Do you have clothes set aside?" And then at the same time, I was seeing a counselor, and she said, if you get in a fight, avoid bathrooms, kitchens, and walls. And I said, bathrooms? She said, yes, those are the places that they can use to hurt you.
Yeah.
And that was the validation I needed. I needed somebody else to say, Mary Kay, you are not crazy.
Yeah.
This is not in your head. This
Mm-hmm.
is legit.
Yeah.
And that was enough. But I had all those other factors, including my family saying, are you sure you should do this?
Mm-hmm.
And it takes more strength and more courage than you can imagine to get out.
Yeah.
It really does. But somehow you find it. Somehow you do it. And I will never forget a few years after we were divorced, and I don't know, because my kids were 2 and 5 at the time, there was lots of back and forth and, whatever. He said to me, he looked at me and he goes, "You're nothing like the woman I married." And he meant it as an insult. And I thought, yes, that's exactly what I want to hear, because you're damn right.
Yes. Yes, I am. I'm not.
I am
And
strong. I'm independent. I am fierce, and I will never put up with that again.
exactly. Exactly. And they emotional abusers don't expect that, because they they try to control you so much that
Mhm.
they begin to feel like their strength is making you feel like you're inferior.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. They diminish your self-worth on a daily basis.
Yeah,
In
they make
in,
you
in
think
microaggressions and big aggressions. It's across the board. It's across the board.
mhm,
So, okay, we've talked about all this heavy stuff.
heavy. Yes.
And it's like, okay, let's take a deep breath. So, Sam, you got out. I got
Yes.
out.
Yes.
Tell me what you did. I mean, I was lucky in the sense that I had a good job. I had my master's degree at that point. So I had a solid education. I actually initiated the divorce. So I had laid some things in place before, to protect myself. Like, I had seen an attorney so I could make sure that my assets were protected. You
Right.
you didn't have that foundation. So you were literally starting with nothing with 2 kids. Tell us what you did.
Starting nothing with 2 kids. And so one of the first thing I had to do was, of course, separated myself from his income. Because since he had taken everything, everything from me, as far as, financials, just everything. I literally had to start over. So, and in filing for a protective order, I separated myself from his income, which, how our country works, in order for me to be able to get food stamps, in order for me to get on Medicaid or Medicare, whichever one it was. And so is going to Department of Social Services with that and saying, gotta swallow your pride, and say, hey, I was blessed because, of course, I knew someone there. So it was a matter of just going in and knowing who to ask for. They set up an appointment for you and everything. Right. So it was taking those steps. It was opening up, which is what we didn't do back then.
Yeah.
It was shedding light and like, what, opening up to say the glass was quite frosted, and begin to share my story of in order to get help in what truly was going on.
Yeah.
I remember the police chief called him and said, please don't pull me over. I'm just telling you right now, before you all pull me over, I have no insurance. I have no money to get insurance. I need to get my children to school. Y'all don't pull me over. It's like, don't pull me over. And he's like a dad to me to this day. He said, Sam, I remember when you called the police and said you wanted to talk to me, and for me to tell my police officers, don't pull you over, because I'm telling you all up front now, I have no insurance. No money to pay insurance, so don't pull me over. It was, as you said, it was going deep to say, I cannot go back to that.
Yeah.
And again, humbling yourself. I remember working on the Hill, for and I remember my first job back into, because I didn't want my children to go to daycare. I wanted they were transitioning. Samuel was only 3 years old. Kimberly was in 7th grade, and formative years, right? Yeah. And I wanted to be present to them. So Mary Kay, my first job was a substitute. My mentor was a principal at the middle school, and she got me a substitute job and was making like $200, sub, only when they need you. And it was doing that, and even investing in service, even being that substitute for the classes, I still helped, and then I got a position as a para, in the special ed department, and worked there. And during this time, my best friend and I started a nonprofit organization that was helping. Funny, I became who I was helping.
There's the reason started it.
Yeah. And so that transitioned me into a position over at the high school, where I started a girls group. And because the principal said to me, Sam, I want young girls to see what an example looks like. Mm-hmm. And that got me into what I love to do even today, is working with young people and guiding them in the right direction, and helping them see that, their future, their potential is within reach. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't easy. He assaulted me. He broke the protective order and assaulted me, and thought, again, that would break me. And I got on the phone to Center for Abused Persons the next day, and with my soul empty, I remember sitting on the floor and just crying. I'm like, I am broken. He's broken me. He knew that if he raped me, that it would break me, and he did. And they said, are you going to report it? I'm like, of course not. Like, I've been through enough with him. But went to pick up our daughter. Again, all the police officers knew me. So I was like, Sam, what's wrong with you? And I didn't know the law. So I told him, my husband assaulted me. And he said, did you report it? I'm like, no, I'm not. He said, are you going to? He's like, no. He said, well, You just did. So I'm reporting it. And he did. But what that did, I'm saying that because what that did, that opened up, again, we have to speak out. We have to seek help. That opened up the opportunity for me to get a lawyer from from Sally, Sexual Assault Legal Institute, who, they're young, spiffy lawyers who want to give back to the community. So they're not county or state lawyers. So little did he know what he was in for with this private lawyer, and told her everything. And she said, don't worry. So in the end, she was amazing. We became friends. She was amazing. And I got my children back, full custody, and had to start over, had to work my way out of the pit and put my children in therapy. I went through therapy to really heal for a season unknown.
Yeah.
That's what I did.
Yeah.
That's what I did. It was really pressing through very difficult, painful conversations of making myself so raw and so vulnerable. I remember sitting at the table one night and I had nothing to give my kids to eat. And they were eating like a sandwich my daughter makes fun of right now, of the vegetable lasagna and the noodles with hot dogs in it. And, just those things that I used to have to give them to eat. And I remember hearing a knock at the door, and this day, Mary Kay, I have no idea. Heard a knock on our door, and we were homeless because, again, he stopped paying the mortgage. He took everything out of the house. Me and my kids were sleeping on one bed. We had nothing. It was just a shell of a house because there was nothing in it but a bed and, a table. And I heard a knock on the door, and when I opened the door, it was a bag of groceries. Where it came from, I have no idea. To this day, I have no idea, all these years later. So, so hard for service, a heart for community, a heart for the school community, is truly where my heart lies to this day, because that's who got me through. Police officers coming to the courtroom to protect me during out hearings, driving by the house at midnight to make sure that me and the kids were safe. It was community that raised my children with me, law enforcement, teachers, principals, advocates. So I pride in giving back and partnering with those individuals today.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I will never forget when my youngest was in elementary school, one of her dearest friends from like kindergarten on was playing at the house, and her mom came to pick her up, and her mom had some really difficult times. Her and her husband had gotten divorced, and she had put him through college, but it was supposed to be her turn, but then they got divorced, and then she couldn't get a job. She had lost her job. He had lost his job. He crashed her car. Like, it was just like a series of things. And I don't know what made me bring this up, but I said something about how my church had started a program called Loaves and Fishes, which is a food bank, a food pantry, I should say.
Yeah.
And I was just talking, I think I was just talking about things that my church did, in the community, social justice things. And she said, "Oh, I know all about that. I get food from there."
Yeah.
And I thought, my God, there's this beautiful little 8-year-old upstairs who I've known since she was 5, who has food insecurity. And, and I live in a beautiful neighborhood. I live, the kids in my kids' schools I live in a community that has UVA professors and physicians primarily, in residence and things like that. So very highly educated pretty affluent people. I'm a single mom, so that's not me. But I am in a townhouse. But my point is that I never realized how close that was.
Yeah.
And I think many people make the assumption that people who need social services aren't trying, or are, are not, they're just milking the system. And I know, having seen it, that that's not the case. Um and it's there for people like you who have left a horrible situation
Right.
and left something knowing that it was going to be really, really hard. And
Mhm.
my counselor used to say to me, you leave when the pain of staying is worse than the pain of leaving.
I love that.
And it's
So
true.
true. That's so powerful.
So true. So you started this nonprofit.
Yes.
You
So,
were looking for donations.
oh my God.
And tell that story.
Yes. So much of my life is channeled around my best friend. It's so funny, Miss Latanya Holland. And I was volunteering at our daughter's middle school because it's a Title I school, and it's a similar story to what you said, which is why I started the organization. A woman came in, please tell me breakfast isn't over, and I asked what's wrong with her, and she was like, Sam, everyone doesn't live like you, and I was like, what do you mean? And so she explained all of that. And so, do you need help? I'm not working. Do you need help? And she said, yeah, we always need help. And so chatted with the principal, and she gave me a letter, and I started volunteering. I was the advocate for begging people. They needed something. I was going out in the community and begging for it. And so um my Latanya, who just believes in me, she said, why don't you do this? So I'm like, do what? And she's like, why don't you start your own nonprofit? You're doing it. And I'm like, I know financing, I know politics. I said, do you have enough money to bail me out of jail? Because I'm not messing with the IRS. And we toyed around with it. And by this, my husband and I were still living together, but we were in-house separated per se. And I said, I don't have any money to do this. And she said, it's fine, I'll help you. So we created brochures on PowerPoint, bless Microsoft. Um, and long story short, I remember we sitting at the door of her restaurant and begging for $5, help us raise money for the 1024. Because, that's expensive. Back then it was like $750. We needed incorporation, so we needed a lawyer and things. But in the onset of it, it was simply to give back to a school community that was giving back to me, helping families in a way that I knew how to help them, even though I was in their situation, but still not in their situation. He was still paying the bills. He was still, paying the mortgage. I still lived in house with him. So I was more or less house poor, you know, but I still had a roof over my head. Just like you said, there's that divide where here are these big houses, but just down the street, there are people living in tents and people who are homeless and people, kids who don't have anything to eat. So we started with just the middle school in helping those families. And within 2 years, we were Nonprofit Organization of the Year. We were supporting the teachers. We created a community day where we partnered with Giants. And then here comes Mr. Barber, my best friend, said, let's go around and ask some people for money. And she set up a meeting with the manager at Sam's Club with his marketing person. And she went in and she pitched, and we're like, thank you, and left out. And I'm so naive because, again, I'm so broken. I have no idea, anything. So became really great friends. This was 2008. By 2010, you know, my husband and I were done, we're separated, and remember going to Sam's Club and was just a mess. And he was like, you know, you have people in your life. You have Latanya. And he said, you have me. I'm like, you are an affluent white man that live in, you know, I was just looking at him like, what do you know about hard times? Give me a break, you know, the sassy. And again, in my brokenness, didn't see that something or someone like that could have an interest in someone like me. And it's like, do you know, do you don't understand what I'm going through? And I remember him inviting me to lunch, and we just sat, and he's like, can I have one of your French fries? Have a fry, you know, have a fry. And we were having a committee meeting and with our partners, and it was at my best friend's house, and she's like, OMG, Barbara likes you. And it's like, you done lost your mind, you know? But needless to say, within a couple months, we were just hanging out, just him being of that support to me. And you know, just shielded my kids because, oh my gosh, Mary Kay, it's so crazy. Even though you're in therapy, you still feel so broken because I looked at him as, again, you know, lived in the heights of Old Town Alexandria, you know, just driving the best car. And I'm like, I'm in my little Jeep, no insurance. I'm not, I'm like, I'm not a charity case, you know, so your mind goes there, right? I'm not a charity case. I don't want anything from you. And oh my gosh, he's a saint for the amount of things that he put up with me, you know. And I remember when he told me that he loved me the first time, he said, I didn't fall in love with your beauty. I fell in love with the beauty of your heart.
Mm.
And yeah, those olive eyes have had me smitten since. And that's going on 12 years of us. I love him more and more every day because there wasn't any secret. He loved me in my brokenness.
Yeah.
Um, he walked with me through therapy. He walked my daughter through therapy because her father abused her as well emotionally during our separation. Because she didn't pick his side, you know. So that was very, very hard. And, you know, he raised our son to be the amazing young man that he is today.
Yeah.
So again, I am living proof, friends, you're living proof, Mary Kay, that there is hope. There's hope. It's not cliche
No.
at all.
Right.
You know, now we have reestablished, we closed reaching out now for a while because, again, in all that chaos, we wanted to raise our children and we wanted to find that space. So again, we gave up something that seemed like we shouldn't have for the sake of family. And that just laid such a stronger foundation for our love and you know, for our kids being raised. And when we walked away from reaching out now, when we moved from Maryland to Alexandria, I was in prayer and I said to myself, I'm like, I want my children to be in a position where it's not, oh my gosh, Samantha, enjoy your parents, to, oh, you're Kendall's parents. And oh my gosh, that happened because she got so involved in service in Alexandria City, from bullying to homelessness, that, do you know what her gift was when she graduated from T.C. Williams High School? The mayor of Alexandria City gifted her with a proclamation of service.
That's amazing.
And when I walked into the banquet hall, the mayor said, oh, you're Kendall's mom. And I was like, yes, I am.
That's
And it was the most amazing thing, that it has switched where we made a great sacrifice to close an organization to raise our kids. And here's a gift. Here's a gift. Yeah.
So we only have a few minutes left. So I always ask, it's okay. I always ask my guests, if you had to give one piece of advice to our listeners, what would it be?
My life coach have said to me that everything is created twice. It first began with a thought. Like Zoom was a thought before it manifested.
Right.
And where I am today, I'm a wife, a mom, I'm influencer, as my friends call me. I'm director of community engagement for People Incorporated for 13 counties in the state, 11 counties in the state of Virginia. I'm president of a nonprofit organization working with public schools in Warren County, and started it with $600. Everything started with a thought. Everything started with, is it possible for me to do this? And if the situation may not look like it's possible, but if you would just take that step into that journey to take yourself out of your dream and go towards your dream, it's possible. So I encourage you, whatever, no matter, not saying that your pain is not real. It is real. Both of us have been through that. But remember, everything starts with a thought. Everything happened twice. Everything is created twice. When God created the earth, he spoke it. He saw it, and then he spoke it. And it's the same for us. And so I encourage you, just don't be afraid to hope. Don't be afraid to dream. Because you can live a life by design instead of a life by default. And
I love that.
Yeah. So I know that's long advice, but stay hopeful. That's my word for 2023, is staying hopeful, because I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for hope, and if it wasn't for saying that it's crazy enough that if I step into it, it is possible. Why life isn't perfect, but to go from being beaten, to go from being crazy, to go from attempting suicide twice, to go from being raped, to have the husband that I have, to be in the director of People Inc. What? Touching lives in 11 counties in the state of Virginia, and also having the opportunity to do my passion in living out my dream through Reaching Out Now as well, to have those both worlds collide, according to Isaiah 58, it's golden.
Yeah.
Golden. So
you. I could talk to you all day. I really could. And I'm just so grateful. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us and for being vulnerable. And I know that what you've shared today is going to resonate with women. And my hope and prayer is that at least one person hears this today and makes the change they need to make to get out.
Yes.
And to know that they can get out, and that it can be really good, that you go from surviving to thriving.
Yes, definitely. It's possible. Look at us.
I know.
Again, our life isn't perfect, but look at us.
Yeah. Yes.
So it's possible. I love it. Love you.
I love you. I love you so much. So thank you. Thank you for your time, honey.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on the Queens of Moxie podcast. I hope that you found it inspirational and that it helps you to think about how you can step into joy and live your authentic life. And remember, we have a weekly email so that you don't miss any of these episodes. Plus, it starts your Monday out with an inspirational quote and a beautiful image. If you haven't subscribed yet, go to queensofmoxie.com and click on Weekly Inspiration. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you again next week.